Hey, welcome to Sleep Crime Stories. Before we begin, let me ask, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? A quick comment and a subscribe go a long way, it really helps. Now, turn down the lights, and let's begin tonight's case. On the night of June 23, 1993, the officers closest to a crime scene had to undertake the unsanitary task of digging through trash. They had a penis to find, and it belonged to John Bobbitt. Lorena, his wife, had sliced it off while he was sleeping. It's been 31 years. John and Lorena are alive and well, and their story remains unforgettable. John and Lorena Bobbitt were a former American couple whose story kept the world shocked and amazed at the audacity of humans when pushed to the extreme. John Wayne Bobbitt married Lorena Gallo on June 18, 1989. John was born in New York and raised in Niagara Falls. Unfortunately, his father was out of the picture and he was taken away from his mother, who was a drug addict at the tender age of 3. He had 2 brothers, and with them he went to live with his aunt and uncle. John stated that he grew up in a large family and his aunt and uncle raised them to be religious. The family went to church every Sunday and John joined the party gladly. When John came of age, he enlisted in the Marines since many of his friends were doing the same. For John, there was no sense in being alone while all his friends were gone. So he found himself a new family, the U.S. Marines. On the other hand, Lorena was born in Ecuador in 1969 but raised in Venezuela. Undoubtedly, she started migrating early in life. As Lorena recounted in her Amazon documentary, she had watched a lot of American television as a child and it sold her the American dream. Her dreams came true when she migrated to America on a student visa. Lorena enrolled and studied at Northern Virginia Community College. John met Lorena at a Marine Corps officers' ball in 1988 while still serving in the Marine Corps. It does not matter if you have banished love at first sight into the pages of cheesy romance books. It happened for John and Lorena. They were attracted to each other and the chemistry was sublime. John described her as shy and didn't speak much English, but the chemistry was enough to start something. So that was what they did. They started dating each other. In 9 months, they were married. John Bobbitt married Lorena on June 18, 1989. According to an interview with 2020, the couple had different versions of how they got engaged. John claimed Lorena proposed to him in the presence of her mother. Lorena claimed the reverse was the case. Their wedding was a small one and officiated by a justice of peace. John adds that love or silly affection for one another had not rushed their wedding. They married quickly because Lorena's student visa would soon expire and she wanted to remain in America. It was her lifelong dream to live in America anyway, and who was John to deny her of such? This was one of the varying instances of their stories. According to Lorena, the abuse started right away after they got married. John has a contrary story. In his account, he did not harm, rape, or forcefully lay his hands on Lorena. He stuck to his story every time he was asked, and it was hard to pinpoint what was going on with the couple. John added that sometimes, when she started fighting him, he restrained her. He maintained his innocence and absolved himself of the assault claim made by Lorena with his testimony. Contrary to John's story, Lorena shared a version of her husband's assault. 1 month after their wedding, the couple were in a car when John started driving recklessly. Lorena was afraid for her life. Who wouldn't be? In her fear, she asked him to stop, placing her hands on the steering wheel. She intervened in a bid to straighten their route. It was at that moment that John, according to allegations levied against him, punched her for the first time. On June 22, 1993, John had suggested a divorce to Lorena, which upset her. Since she was still scared of him, she went to the police for help. The trip was in hopes of getting a protective order against John. The process took about 3 hours, but Lorena did not want to wait that long, so she left before she completed it. In the early hours of that evening, John went out drinking with his friend who had come to stay with him. When he returned home, he raped Lorena before he fell asleep. When he awoke, John said he had no memory or recall of what had transpired. He did not remember sex taking place between Lorena and himself, and the closest thing to a physical contact he vaguely remembered was petting, and that was it. On June 23, 1993, Lorena came home from work like any other day. John came home that night and raped her. It seemed the act was more customary than it was a one-time event. Afterwards, Lorena walked into the kitchen for a cup of water. There among the kitchen utensils was the knife that could give her breathing space from the instrument of torture her husband used to inflict pain on her. Lorena grabbed an 8-inch Jinsu carving knife she saw on the kitchen counter and walked into the bedroom with it. Lorena pulled back the sheets and severed John's member. Shortly after, Lorena left the apartment, got into a car, and drove away with the severed appendage in one of her hands. As she drove on, navigating the road with one hand on the wheel became too much work as the other hand held the severed member. She soon threw the shaft out of a window into a roadside field on Maplewood Drive. She drove around, not knowing what to do or whom to call. Eventually, she stopped and dialed 911, reporting what had happened and giving directions to where they could find her husband's missing appendage. The officers got there and got to work. After an exhaustive search, they did find John's missing appendage, washed it with antiseptic, and kept it in an icebox. Afterwards, paramedics drove him to a hospital. The surgeons reattached it in a surgical operation that took almost 10 hours. The incident happened in the early hours of 1993, around 4 a.m. By nightfall, Lorena had been arrested by the police and charged with the crime of malicious wounding. She risked spending up to 20 years in prison if found guilty. When Lorena Bobbitt was arrested, she reportedly told the police, "He always has an orgasm, and he doesn't wait for me ever to have an orgasm. He's selfish." The conversation ensued with Detective Peter Wentz and was recorded on a tape recorder. Mary Grace O'Brien, the Assistant Commonwealth Attorney of Prince William County, who was prosecuting Lorena, read the recording transcript that was read at trial. Many things about the couple's relationship came to limelight during the trial. Their home was somewhat volatile and had not been a happy place for Lorena. The Bobbitts revealed details of the event that led to the eventual act. Lorena accused John of abusing her sexually, physically, and emotionally. In addition to that, he flaunted his infidelity in her face and even forced her to abort a pregnancy. An expert witness had testified that John's threat imprisoned Lorena. "I will find you whether we are divorced or separated. Wherever I find you, I will have sex with you whenever I want to." The defense lawyer, Blair D. Howard, maintained that Lorena had acted in self-defense, coupled with temporary insanity. He stated that it was John's behavior and constant harassment that led to Lorena's snapping. She had been suffering from clinical depression. In addition to a truckload of post-traumatic stress disorder in the mix, one would likely have a mentally unstable person in their hands. The defense argued that John's perpetual abuse of his wife had caused everything. John denied all the allegations of abuse and harassment, but when Howard, the defense lawyer, cross-examined him, he found it hard to be consistent, conflicting his statement with known facts. In the course of the questioning, he weakened the prosecutor's case. In Lorena's testimony, there had been other rapes and physical battering on many occasions before the evening of the incident. She revealed that their finances were unstable, and John had not only stolen her earnings, but also spent the proceeds. Other witnesses corroborated Lorena's stories and claimed they had seen cuts and bruises on her. John's friends came forward to testify that John told them how he controlled her, forcefully had sex with her, and dominated her. The prosecution and the defense attorneys agreed that John definitely had a history of abusing his wife, and the repeated acts built up to the assault over time. The expert witnesses from both ends concluded that Lorena had been constantly battered and abused, and by 1993, she lived in fear of John. Before Lorena's trial, John was on trial from the 8th to the 10th of November 1993. On the 11th of November 1993, a jury of 9 women and 3 men found him not guilty of marital assault. John Bobbitt gave different variations of what happened between midnight of June 22nd and the early morning of June 23, 1993. In one account, he said they had not had sex, and even though Lorena had initiated sex, he was too tired to engage in it. In another account, he claimed that they had had sex, but he had slept through the whole act. The sex was, however, consensual, not a rape. After 7 long hours of deliberation, the jury found Lorena to be the most credible. She was found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity. On the 24th of January 1994, Lorena was admitted into a psychiatric ward for 45 days. It was a 45-day evaluation period at the Central State Hospital in Petersburg. On March 1, 1994, she was released after being considered not a threat to herself or the society. In 1995, John and Lorena Bobbitt finalized their divorce. A series of events led to what happened between Lorena and John Bobbitt. Not taking them into account might seem like a biased way of reporting what went down. As he was the victim, John Bobbitt's severed penis gained all the attention and the sensation it could get. Not just that, due to what had happened, some feminists frowned on what Lorena had done as they feared it might have far-reaching consequences. But that would be a one-sided story. John was discharged from the Marines in 1991 and no longer had a steady paycheck. Ask anybody and they will agree that losing a credible and steady source of income might slow things down in any family. He had trouble finding or keeping a job. The role of the sole household provider soon fell on Lorena. At this time, Lorena worked as a nanny in the Virginia area and as a manicurist in a beauty salon. Lorena soon developed a close relationship with the woman who owned the salon, Jenna Basutti. In October 1991, Lorena started to embezzle Basutti's money. She stole about $7,000, and when Basutti realized the embezzlement, she ordered Lorena to repay the stolen money with interest. Lorena could keep her job at the salon but looked elsewhere for her newfound hobby of theft. She stole a few dresses from Nordstrom, and when she got caught, she was punished with community service. In the same year, Lorena had an abortion, and they had different stories about what happened again. According to Lorena, she was excited to start a family, but John did not receive the news with the same enthusiasm Lorena exhibited. She adds that John did not think he could care for the baby and suggested leaving Lorena if she kept and had the child. The fear of raising a child alone led Lorena to the choice of an abortion, and she insisted that John was the reason she had it. John's story was different as he recounted that Lorena had agreed that the time was not right for the couple to have a baby. They both decided on the abortion together. After the incident, John remained broke. To generate money, he tried to form a band called the Severed Parts to pay his mounting legal and medical bills. The band was not a success and it failed to generate money. In September 1994, John appeared in an adult film, John Wayne Bobbitt Uncut. After the trial, John Bobbitt moved to Las Vegas where he met Ron Jeremy. In an interview he had with Vanity Fair, John opened up about the adult film. A porno seemed like the best way to show my penis worked, only it wasn't all the way healed yet. I realize now that that was the point. The movie had not yet premiered when charges were brought against John by his new girlfriend Christina Elliott. He was found guilty of misdemeanor and domestic battery charges. He served 12 days out of the 15-day sentence a judge handed him. John divorced Lorena in 1995, and in 1996, he took another role in an adult film. One would wonder what the endgame was and why his phallus needed to grace screens. He had a reason that was at least reasonable to him. Besides the financial part, John had said yes to an offer from Howard Stern to undergo a reconstructive plastic surgery which would see the penis further enlarged. The second porno was titled Frankenpenis and was released in 1996. In 1999, John had accumulated a lot of legal issues for himself, ranging from assault to battery. He pleaded guilty to a charge of felony with attempted grand larceny after stealing $140,000 worth of clothing in Nevada. In the same year, a court found him guilty of harassing an ex-girlfriend named Desiree A. Luz. In 2002, he was charged afresh with battering his third wife, Joanna Farrell. He was found not guilty and was acquitted. Lorena resorted to keeping a low profile after the trial. To achieve that, she reverted to the use of her maiden name, Gallo. In October 1996, she visited Ecuador, the place of her birth, and had an official dinner with the current president, Abdallah Bucaram. The unlikely couple then baptized the child together as a godfather and a godmother. Their relationship sparked controversy in the media. The president was even criticized for having dinner with Lorena. In 1997, Lorena was in the news again after she was charged with assault against her mother. Reports had it that she punched the woman, Elvia Gallo, while they watched television. Lorena was soon acquitted of the charge, and her mother remained with her. Lorena Gallo returned to the community college and found Dave Bellinger. The two became lovers in the late 90s and have since been together. Though they are unmarried, they have one daughter named Olivier together. Their decision to stay unmarried is speculated to be fear for marriages on Lorena's part, as her first marriage had not worked. In 2007, Lorena Gallo started a foundation aimed at helping women who were in abusive relationships. Her foundation was called Lorena's Red Wagon Foundation, a non-profit organization that helps survivors of domestic abuse. Lorena and John were never seen together in public, at least not until 2009, when they made their first and only joint television appearance. All through their trial, before, during, and after, the couple took interviews but separately, never together. That changed in 2009 when The Insider brought them together. In the interview, Lorena told John, "You drove me crazy. You drove me insane. No woman should go through what I went through." In 2019, a docuseries titled Lorena premiered on Amazon and reignited conversations around the incident involving Lorena Bobbitt, her claims of domestic abuse and marital rape. Back in the 1990s, the Bobbitts were the talk of the time and the opening line for every comedian in the country. It definitely would have a different reaction today. In an interview with Olivia B. Waxman, Lorena Gallo opens up about how she felt about her case in the media reports. She said, "It was sad because they were more concerned about ratings than anything. They were more concerned about his penis instead of domestic violence. They missed the whole concept of domestic violence and abuse against women by a mile." She continued, "This is a very important issue that's going on, and you're more concerned about the man who lost his penis. The whole country was divided into women and men. Unfortunately, we're still in a patriarchal society. It's a man's world that hasn't changed much." She further lamented how the new generation knew nothing about the story and how it went down. She disclosed that there was a history that preceded what happened. She further spoke on how she guided the detectives and police officers to where she had dumped her former husband's member. According to her, her help in finding her ex-husband's member depicted that she was not vindictive and that the incident was not out of spite. She declared that if she had done it with bad intentions, she would have replied to them with unconcern. Aside from the TV show where they had met in 2009, very little is said by John Wayne Bobbitt about the incident. He admits he still harbors feelings towards Lorena, but they hardly see each other. "I loved the woman she was," John said in an interview. With all indications, he had moved on from the incident, and even though the incident had made him famous and featured in 2 adult films, it seemed there was no staying out of trouble for John Bobbitt. While his former partner now has a foundation for women who are survivors of domestic abuse, Bobbitt, as of 2019, was reported as living in North Las Vegas and searching for treasures hidden in the Rockies by Forrest Fenn, according to Vanity Fair. In the August 2018 issue of Vanity Fair, John stated he was paying his bills from the settlement he received from a car crash he suffered in 2014. He also told the magazine that he had a penile reduction surgery in 2016 in a bid to reverse the cosmetic work he had undergone in earlier years. John still maintains his innocence. According to what the New York Times reported, he said, "Gallo was never abused. She was the abuser, and she cut off my penis because I was going to leave her." The story of Lorena and John Bobbitt happened at a time when patriarchy was still rife and marital rape was just starting to have laws against it in the 50 states of the United States. Lorena was inspired by her own story and the incident, yet she feels sad about the big picture which the sensationalist media of the time ensured people missed. In a way, John's genitals gained more popularity than the underlying condition that caused it to start with, which was domestic violence and abuse. From t-shirts to commercials, the term Bobbittize was everywhere. Today, her story may have taken a different turn. The media and general public would have addressed Lorena's part more than it was in 1994. There is no doubt that the system that empowers men because they have phallus is what Lorena Gallo wants to stop with her foundation, as she thinks women deserve to be heard and helped. Amy Chozick, in her interview with Lorena Gallo, described her as being straightforward and open. "I know I'm still Lorena Bobbitt. That name, it's significant here," Lorena says as Heather Sten of the New York Times reports. As Lorena drove Amy around in the neighborhood where it all happened, she admired what she had done for herself and how far she had come. She was quoted by Heather Sten saying, I'll put myself through the jokes and everything as long as I can shine a light on domestic violence and sexual assault and marital rape. She had no time to regret what she had done. The cutting off of her husband's penis. Amy asked her if she had regretted doing that, and her response was, "How can you regret something you didn't mean to do?" Today, a woman like Lorena would have been celebrated for standing up for herself and being a voice for the voiceless. Regardless, in her gentle way, the way she inspires is as graceful. And her war, albeit unintentional, against domestic violence was one she subdued. Still with me? Good, that means you're ready for the rest. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more cases just like this one. Angela Craig was poisoned and declared brain dead on March 18, 2023. The culprit? Her own husband, James. The Craig family lived a seemingly average life. The couple had 6 kids, and the family did face financial trouble despite living in a $1 million home that was all paid off. But things took a much darker turn for them on March 6, 2023, and all of it started with a protein shake. Denver, one of the most highly populated cities in Colorado, is known for its suburbs. But who knew that it would be in these suburbs where the life of a seemingly normal and ordinary family would take a dark turn? March 18, 2023, marked the death of Angela Craig, a loving and caring mother of 6. Her sudden illness and all the symptoms she had experienced took the doctors by surprise. Soon after her death, James Craig, her husband, got caught up in a series of lies as the sinister plan he developed for Angela's murder was revealed. As the case progressed, Angela's family was taken aback as they were exposed to one horror after another in what they thought was normal life. Angela Craig was pronounced brain dead at 4:29 p.m. The reason for her death at the time remained unknown, given that she was perfectly healthy before suffering from the illness. Her condition got to a point where her organs began shutting down. Doctors at the time were mystified. How could the medical condition of some who were perfectly healthy and going on trips to see family members deteriorate to the point where it would cause their death? Aurora is an eastern suburb located just 25 minutes outside of Denver. The region is known for its outdoor activities, schools, and overall ambience. Within that town lived a family of 8, James and Angela Craig, and their 6 children named Tolliver, Mira, Belle, Violet, Nora, and Cleo. James and Angela got married in 1999. At the time, they were 20 and 21, madly in love, and wanted to start a family together. Both of them were originally from Dodge City, Kansas, and had moved to Denver, Colorado after James had finished dental school and teaching at UMKC in 2006. In Denver, James started practicing at Summerbrook Dental, and Angela would help out at the facility when needed. Summerbrook Dental soon became the best option in the region. Apart from dentistry, the Craigs were known to be active members of the LDS and Mormon Church. At the church, Angela took on many roles, including being a teacher, a choir director, a youth organization leader, and a family history consultant. Out of all these roles, her favorite was being a family history consultant, as it involved helping families figure out their history and perform temple ordinances on his behalf. All 6 of their children were raised and baptized in the church, and they participated in all the activities. Everything seems to be going pretty well in their lives, doesn't it? In 2019, James made around $800,000, and the family lived in a $1 million paid-off home. But wait till you hear this. The same year, he took a $675,000 and a $242,000 loan against his house. Despite his income, the family did face financial difficulties. He had taken out these loans to fix things, but the opposite happened. He ended up owing $315,000 to the IRS, had $200,000 in credit card debt, and over $750,000 in other types of debt, which included some bad investments in cryptocurrencies. The following year, his total debt amounted to $2.2 million, and he had to file for bankruptcy. In 2022, Summerbrook Dental began experiencing financial difficulties of its own, and wasn't keen on keeping him on board. He realized that he would have to file for bankruptcy again. However, it was at that time that his dental school friend Ryan stepped in. Ryan acquired Summerbrook Dental, and the two officially became business partners. Both Ryan and James and their families had always been best friends, but in 2022, James began to confide in Ryan more than ever before. On the morning of March 6, 2023, both James and Angela got up early to work out, and each had a protein shake. Later in the morning, James received a text message from Angela, who wasn't feeling well. In the text, she'd asked him if he had added extra vitamins to her protein shake as she was feeling dizzy. To this, James responded that he'd added in a full scoop of caffeine and 1 big scoop of B vitamins, and that he was feeling a bit shaky too. However, Angela told him that she only takes 1 small scoop of the B vitamins. As the two continued to talk, Angela told James that she felt as if she had been drugged. The response James sent to this message will make you think about whether the Craig family was actually living a normal life or not. His response to the text was, "Given our history, I know that must be triggering. Just for the record, I didn't drug you. I am super worried though. You looked really pale before I left. Like in your lips even. This is quite an unusual thing to say, but we'll get into it later on in the video." On March 6th, Angela was eventually admitted to the Parker Adventist Hospital as the symptoms were not going away. Despite numerous tests, medical professionals at the hospital could not identify the cause of her condition, and she was sent home the same day. On the morning of March 7th, James told Angela that he would take the day off from the dental clinic since she wasn't feeling well. Angela, however, aware of the family's financial situation, told James that he should go to work instead, and that everything would be okay. Both of them continued to communicate via text throughout the entire day. She told him that it was probably just sickness, and that she planned on reaching out to her primary care doctor. During the day, she also sent him a text that read, "I'm kind of wondering if maybe I had a sinus infection, and I didn't really even notice because I got so used to them and it turned into an inner ear infection, and that's why it felt like it came on all of a sudden." As the two of them continued to talk, Angela told James that earlier in the day she had passed out in the kitchen, and that the only thing she remembered about the incident was their daughter Violet screaming. After hearing this, James told her that she should call 911, but she refused. At that time, James talked to a person named Matt and discussed Angie's condition with him. According to Matt, the symptoms she was experiencing lined up with diabetes. He recommended that Angie should call a new primary doctor, mentioning that she's a diabetic and that she needs to be seen sooner rather than later. However, Angie called her own doctor to make an appointment. She even texted James, telling him not to use those words and that he told Matt to stick it. Angela then scheduled an appointment for Friday, March 10th, but later moved to Thursday so that she could be seen earlier. Both of them spent the night of the 7th watching TV and snuggling, hoping for a better tomorrow. A day after passing out in the kitchen, Angela started to feel better on March 8th, but was still unaware of the devious plan her husband had set in motion. The improvements she experienced on March 8th were short-lived. The following day, she began to feel cold, tired, shaky, weak, and dizzy. On March 9th, a family friend brought over a glucometer to the house, and Angie was measuring in at 179. The readings, however, dropped to 140 later during the day. She later ended up being admitted to the hospital as her symptoms wouldn't subside. After hearing about this, James texted Angie, was he trying to joke around and lighten the mood to make Angie feel better? Or was this response pure sarcasm coming from the fact that his plan was working? We'll learn more about this as the story unfolds. During that day, both Angie and James continued to text about different things like church, the kids, and other family affairs. Over the next 5 days, doctors conducted several different tests to determine the cause of Angie's condition. Most of the issues she was experiencing appeared to be related to blood pressure and vomiting. During that time, family members and friends pitched in, helped out with the kids, brought meals, and were there for Angie when needed. James also begins to have frequent conversations with Ryan's wife, Michelle, who has a PhD in nursing and was also working as a professor. She was also trying to figure out the answer to what was happening to Angie. However, she was also unaware of the plan that James had initiated. On March 10th, James told Michelle that not having any answers was becoming pretty rough. He also mentioned that one of the main problems Angie was experiencing was her blood pressure, which at the time was 100/60, and prior to that was 56/44. He also mentioned that the doctors would keep her for one more night. During the conversation, he emphasized that his main concern was how Angie must be feeling. But given what we know about his plans, this was probably just an attempt to gain sympathy. Over the next few days, James had shown tremendous care towards Angie and the kids and did everything he had to get the family through the rough time. One of the times when he visited the hospital, he even told Angie that he was sorry for not bringing any flowers. However, all of this could have just been a part of his master plan, as it would have helped avoid suspicion when he'd actually succeeded with his motives. Angela would stay admitted at the hospital until March 14th. After doctors were unable to determine what caused her condition, she was sent home with an oxygen tank with instructions to use it full-time. When she got back home, she texted James jokingly and said that he'd married an old lady who was now in an oxygen tank. When Angie got back, the children and everyone else hoped this would be the end of the trauma. The Craig family still didn't have a diagnosis about what had happened, but Angie was doing better. She felt stable and wasn't vomiting. However, all of this turned out to be false hope, as her improvements were short-lived. On the morning of March 15th at around 11 a.m., Angie's brother rushed her to the University of Colorado Hospital's emergency room. At this point, everyone was desperate for answers, but no one was aware of the horrendous act James had committed to cause all of this. He arrived at the hospital soon after Angela had been admitted. She complained of a severe headache and dizziness. A few hours later, at around 2 p.m., Angela had a seizure and her condition began to decline. Doctors at the University of Colorado had failed to incubate her, and she was suffering from intracranial pressure, which essentially means that there was an issue with the blood flow to her brain. In addition, her pupils were also unresponsive. Given her condition, she was moved to the intensive care unit, ICU, and doctors stated that her condition was dire. As all of this was going on, James texted Michelle 2 pictures of Angie and told her that Angie's condition had gotten quite worse. Her blood pressure was 55/44, and SOP2 was 84. He also told her that the doctors had stated Angie should have been mentally responsive by then, but she wasn't. After hearing this, both Michelle and Ryan rushed to the hospital to offer support. But James, at that time, was unaware that this text would lead to him being exposed. On his way to the University of Colorado Hospital, Ryan got a call from the office manager at Summerbrook Dental, Jacqueline. She told Ryan that James had come back to the office on March 6th after hours. Ryan was informed that another employee, Caitlin, had seen James using a computer in exam room 9, and the lights were turned off. It seems like a regular office thing at first, right? But James had no reason to be using that computer, since he had one in his own office and used to frequently bring his own laptop to Summerbrook Dental. After leaving the office that day, James texted Caitlin that he would be receiving a personal package at the office and that she was not to open it. The package arrived at the office on March 13th and was opened by another employee who was unaware of it being a personal item. Inside was a foil square with a biohazard warning and a slip labeled potassium cyanide. The employee resealed the package and handed it over to James. When Caitlin heard about Angie's condition, she became suspicious and talked to Jacqueline. The reasons for suspicion? Well, you see, she had previously experienced symptoms of ingesting potassium cyanide, and her symptoms included nausea, low blood pressure, and vomiting. It was pretty much the same thing Angie had been experiencing ever since she took that protein shake. At the time, she recalled James telling her that Angie had accused him of poisoning her when she was sick, and that James had even said that there are poisons hospitals don't even test for. She also remembered that James had told Angie he wanted a divorce. It's worth mentioning here that both James and Angela were having relationship problems, most of which were because of James. He had been addicted to porn since his teenage years, had gambling issues, and was exposed to several affairs. Both Ryan and Michelle arrived at the hospital separately and talked to James for a short while. Ryan went over to one of the nurses and told her everything he had just learned from Jacqueline on the phone, including the fact that he suspected Angie had been poisoned by her husband. Afterward, both Ryan and Michelle stayed with James as he spoke to the doctors about Angie's prognosis and dealt with emotions of what they were telling him. Although both Ryan and Michelle had arrived at the hospital separately, they went to one of their cars together. While in the car, Ryan received a phone call from James. He wanted to know if Ryan had talked to anyone at the hospital. On the call, he admitted to sharing information about the package. James argued that the package contained a ring for Angela, but Ryan, who knew the truth, claimed that the package in fact did not contain a ring. James questioned his claims by saying that he couldn't have known what was in the package since it had never been opened. However, Ryan told him that the package had been opened and then asked him why he had ordered potassium cyanide. At this point, James came up with a new story. He told Ryan that he had ordered the potassium cyanide because Angie had asked him to since she didn't have the right credentials to place an order. However, he had never thought Angie would actually end up using it. Ryan, who had a pretty clear idea of what had happened, told James to stop talking and get a lawyer. The nurse that Ryan had talked to was a mandated reporter and had informed the police, which triggered an investigation. Police arrived at the hospital just after midnight on March 16. By that time, Angela was in a coma, and doctors were not sure whether she'd make it through the night. After talking with the hospital staff, detectives learned that there had been no change in Angie's condition. They spoke to Ryan and Michelle, whose stories matched up. In addition, they also asked Caitlin to come to the Aurora police station and make a statement. Given that James and Angie had minor children, a CPS investigation was also triggered. During the investigation, the kids were given time to go and see Angie. However, she had made no progress by that time, so it was basically a time to say goodbye. The kids were initially allowed to say goodbye at 6:45 p.m. However, due to the ongoing investigation, they had to wait until 10 p.m. Angela was pronounced brain dead on March 18th at 4:29 p.m., and James was the one who opted to pull the plug. James was eager to not have an autopsy performed on Angela's body and wanted a cremation as soon as possible. The investigation, however, had begun before she was pronounced brain dead. The investigation revealed that Angela had 3 different substances in her blood: potassium cyanide, arsenic, and tetrahydrolazine. Given this, her death was declared a homicide, and James Craig was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The police investigation started on March 16th. They were able to get search warrants for his home, dental office, and devices. Some of the items seized from his residence included a computer tablet, a water bottle on an exercise bike, multiple types of powdered protein, and 2 unlabeled plastic bags containing a white powdery substance. The police interviewed James and his children individually, and a Child Protective Services (CPS) worker contacted them as well. The worker stated that James had told them that Angela had considered suicide, and that he had revived her after several suicide attempts. James also mentioned he asked Angela for a divorce in December 2022, and her depression got worse after. The caseworker was compelled to report James mentioning Angela overdosing on opioids, and that her toxicology reports would have something unusual in them. The children, however, didn't report anything similar. The oldest one was age 20, and it's very unlikely that Angela's depression and suicide attempts would have gone unnoticed. In addition, James never sought any medical or psychiatric help for Angie. One of the messages retrieved from his device was sent to Ryan. In the message, James mentioned that he was unhappy that Ryan got the authorities involved, and that if he really cared for him, he would not speak to the police unless forced to do so. The message read, "I understand why you did what you did. I do. I get it. But if you had come to me personally, man to man, instead of talking to everyone else about what you thought you knew, I might have let you in on some details that would have made you less likely to cause this horrible storm. If you had only put me higher on your list of priorities, instead of putting everyone else's opinions and gossip ahead of me. For that, I am very, very mad at you." The police had also retrieved text message conversations between the couple. In those conversations, James had asked Angela not to talk to her sister about what the couple was experiencing. This conversation happened on March 1st when Angie was visiting Utah. After contacting Angie's sister, Tony, police uncovered that James had drugged Angela 5 or 6 years ago. He claimed that the reason for this was to keep Angela from stopping him as he gave himself a fatal injection. However, no evidence of James committing suicide was found. The police later talked to the office manager at Summerbrook Dental, who told them the entire story about Exam Room 9 and the personal package. The police examined the search history and hard drive of the computer in Exam Room 9. In it, they found a Gmail account belonging to James and different search queries such as, how many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? Is arsenic detectable in autopsy? Undetectable poisons that show no signs of foul play. The police also found that the same Gmail account was used to order arsenic metal from Amazon. The same account was also used to order Sigma 2078110-25G, aka potassium cyanide. In addition, police also discovered personal communication records between James and another woman. Both of them had started dating and conversed about going through a lengthy divorce. The woman also took 2 flights to Colorado. The woman was an orthodontist who had met James at a conference where he had told her that he was already living separately from his wife. Since Angela's murder, she has cooperated with the police investigations. She mentioned that their relationship wasn't serious. She had mentioned that both of them hadn't started talking about a future together, and that she wouldn't have dated him had she known he was still married and living with his wife. This woman told the police all of this to explain that she could not have been the motive behind Angela's murder. Experts believe that the protein shakes Angie had consumed were poisoned, and that she was given minor doses prior to receiving a fatal one. As of now, James has not entered a plea. He has been assigned a public defender, and his trial is scheduled to begin on August 8, 2024. The motive behind the murder? James is $2.2 million in debt, and Angela has 3 life insurance policies, with James being the beneficiary of each. Could it be money? An affair? We'll have to wait for the trial to find out for sure. Maria Munoz, a young woman full of life, met a tragic end on September 22, 2020 that shocked her loved ones. The community was puzzled about who could have done such a terrible thing, until they were shocked to discover that Maria's own husband was the unexpected suspect. As the details emerged, a web of secrets and deception was revealed, leaving everyone close to Maria shocked and saddened. In the bustling state of Texas, a shocking event unfolded that left everyone shocked. Maria Munoz, a young and lively woman full of dreams, met a tragic end that deeply affected her family and friends. The events leading to her unexpected death on September 22, 2020 left many stunned, especially when suspicions turned toward her own husband as the possible culprit. The story took a dark turn when toxicology reports found 7 different drugs in her system. Also, it's hard to believe Maria's journal was also the key evidence that helped catch the killer. It's crazy to think that something Maria wrote down played such a big part in solving the case. As the investigation progressed, secrets began to surface, revealing a side of the story that nobody saw coming. Maria Munoz, born on January 25, 1989, was one of 3 children to Marisol Rodriguez and Jorge Luis Munoz. Growing up in a vibrant and loving household in Puerto Rico, she faced early loss when her mother passed away. Also around that time, she met Joel Pellet. Despite this hardship, Maria took on the role of caregiver for her siblings, Marisol Munoz and Peter Hernandez. Maria and Pellet first met in Puerto Rico, Maria's home country. At that time, Pellet was a nursing student with big dreams, and Maria was also a nurse. Pellet was 11 years older than Maria, but despite the age gap of 11 years, they both tied the knot in 2011. Later, they moved to Laredo, Texas, where Pellet secured a prestigious position as a nurse anesthetist at a local hospital, bringing in a substantial income. Their newfound financial stability afforded them a life of extravagance, filled with luxury cars and extravagant vacations. Maria Munoz, age 31, lived in Laredo, Texas, as a full-time mother caring for her 2 young sons and her husband, Joel Pellet, aged 42. She left her job just to take good care of her children. Maria, a loving stay-at-home mom, cherished her 2 young boys. Every day, she would take them to the park to play and read to them before bedtime, showing her dedication as a mother. While she enjoyed being at home with her children, she also found joy in playing the piano as a hobby. Despite her happiness as a stay-at-home mom, she always held on to her dream of returning to school and becoming a nurse again. For a long time, everything appeared to be going smoothly in their relationship. Pellet would often share pictures of his wife and children, proudly talking about how wonderful they were to his friends and colleagues. However, behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. In the year 2018, shortly after Maria welcomed their second son, those close to Pellet began to observe a shift in his behavior. He underwent a noticeable transformation, losing weight and gaining muscle. He also became increasingly sociable with other women, displaying flirtatious behavior that did not align with the conduct expected of a married man. He began removing photos that featured his wife and children, instead opting to post pictures of himself alone. This change in his online activity gave the impression that he was living a single life, without the responsibilities and commitments of a married man with a family. That same year, the colleagues observed Pellet becoming increasingly friendly with a surgical nurse named Janet Ardondo. Over time, it became clear that they both had started a secret relationship, carrying on an affair behind Maria's back. But in early 2020, Maria's worst fears came true. She found airline tickets that Pellet had bought for himself and Janet to travel to Europe. This discovery left Maria heartbroken and depressed. She had trusted him and thought their marriage was strong. But then she felt betrayed. Maria was devastated to learn that life they had built together for 10 years was a lie. She didn't know how to move forward, feeling lost and alone. In the midst of her emotional breakdown, she sought help from a therapist to cope with the devastating truth about her marriage. The therapist prescribed medication to support Maria through her mental health struggles. Around this time, Maria turned to writing journals as a way to process her thoughts and emotions. Soon, things were getting worse between Pellet and Maria. So, on September 19, 2020, Maria went to Janet's house and saw Pellet's car parked in the driveway. She confronted them at the house, and when he came out, Maria made him choose between her and Janet. In answer, he said he'll choose Janet. During the argument, Janet called the police, but Maria and Pellet had left by the time they arrived. The police called Maria while she was driving with Pellet, and they heard him yelling at her in the background. When they got home, he became so angry that he punched a hole in Maria's car windshield, which was an alarming display of force and anger. The following morning, on Sunday, September 20th, Maria sent Pellet a text message expressing her intention to hire a lawyer to help sort out their situation. However, he replied, suggesting that they handle things without involving lawyers, as he believed it would be too costly. Just a few hours after their text exchange, it seemed that he had a change of heart. He sent Maria an email expressing his deep sadness and inner turmoil. In the email, he conveyed his desire to sit down with Maria for an honest and non-argumentative conversation. This is what he said: "I am so sad, I am hurting inside. I want to sit down with you to talk without arguing. A heart-to-heart." Maria replied to his email, and they both agreed to meet at approximately 5 p.m. the next night on Monday, September 21st. Before going to meet him, she was so nervous and then messaged her friend Yasmin Martinez that today they were going to meet. This is what she said: "I just ask if you can pray for me." But sadly, her prayers were not answered, and the meeting ended in a horrifying way. On September 22nd, 2020, Pellet dialed 911 in a panic, mentioning that his wife might have taken some prescription pills and was not breathing. Officer Dyla Cruz was the first who came to Pellet's house at around 1:40 a.m., and his body cam was also recording every detail. The officer found Pellet at the top of the stairs near the main bedroom. He was still wearing his green hospital scrubs and was doing CPR on his wife. Their 2 sons were sleeping in the rooms close by. As soon as the paramedics got there, they took over doing CPR on Maria. While first responders were working diligently to save Maria's life, another officer approached Pellet to inquire about the pills she had reportedly taken. Without hesitation, Pellet went to a nearby bathroom, searched through the medicine cabinet, and retrieved a bottle. He handed it to the officers, who later discovered it contained a prescription for clonazepam, a benzodiazepine medication used to manage acute anxiety, panic attacks, and sometimes epilepsy. Benzodiazepines, like clonazepam, work by slowing down the nervous system to induce a calming effect. Upon examining the bottle, the officer noticed that the pills were actually prescribed to Pellet, not Maria. Another detail that caught the officer's attention was that the pill bottle had been returned to the medicine cabinet. Typically, in cases of overdose, the pill bottle is found near the person. Afterward, Pellet was captured on body camera picking up the pill container from the floor and placing it in his pocket. De la Cruz questioned himself as to why he would retrieve the pills. Could he be concealing something? Another reason to suspect Pellet with De la Cruz also came across a needle catheter on the stairs in the couple's home. This seemed odd to him. Pellet and Maria had 2 young children, so finding a needle on the stairs raised questions about why it was there. This is not all. Investigators also uncovered more than just a needle. They also discovered syringes and floor equipment neatly packed in a medical bag. While this finding may seem ordinary given Pellet's profession as an anesthesia nurse, the presence of these medical tools outside a clinical setting raised intriguing questions for the investigators. Despite this unusual circumstance, Pellet informed the officers that Maria had been struggling with deep depression recently. He explained that her mental health had been deteriorating, leading her to take the pills in an attempt to cope with her overwhelming emotions. So, despite first responders' best efforts, Maria couldn't be revived. It's hard to believe, but by 3:58 a.m. that day, she was pronounced dead. After Maria was declared dead, officers took Pellet downstairs to the kitchen for additional questioning. He then explained to the officers that on that day, he and Maria had met for a conversation. After their discussion, they both got intimate and then he took a shower. Upon exiting the shower, he found Maria asleep. He went downstairs for a while, though the reason for this was not clarified. When he returned upstairs and approached Maria, he discovered she was unresponsive and not breathing. While talking, the officer noticed Pellet's strange behavior. He was sweating very badly and was literally unable to answer simple questions about the incident. The officer also observed that Pellet's level of sweating was noticeably higher than anyone else present, even the first responder who had been trying to save Maria's life for the past 2 hours. This made officers more suspicious of him. For further questioning, he was then taken by Sergeant Luis Mata to the police station. At the police station, Pellet was left alone in the interrogation room for a while before an officer came in. His every action was getting recorded on video. When officers watched the footage, they were shocked to see how Pellet suddenly went crazy. He started screaming, crying, hitting the walls, and throwing furniture around the room. He was being so loud and out of control that people in the hallway and other rooms nearby got scared hearing all the voices coming from his room. So, at 4 a.m., an officer, Sergeant Luis Mata, entered the room to talk to Pellet. During this conversation, he opened up once again about the events leading up to Maria's death. Shockingly, he also confessed to the officer that he had been involved with another woman named Janet. He revealed that he had actually left the family home 5 months earlier and was living with her at the time of Maria's death. He shared that he had been in a relationship with Janet for 2 years by then, and Maria had been aware of the affair for a while. According to him, on the night of Maria's passing, he visited the family home to have a conversation with her about their marriage. After their discussion, they got intimate. He said he thought Maria was asleep in her room, but only 10 minutes later when he returned to check on her, but tragically found her unresponsive. He later confessed to the officer that he gave Maria the medication prescribed to him, clonazepam, to help ease her anxiety and depression. However, he couldn't provide details to the officer about how much she had taken or how many pills were left in the bottle before she accessed them. Unfortunately, he was unable to provide any additional information to help clarify the situation. After all the questioning, he was released. So, the next step was to do Maria's autopsy. The autopsy took place just 8 hours after her death, which was relatively soon after she passed away. This timing meant that whatever caused her death should still be detectable in her stomach contents. As the investigation into Maria's death intensified, the autopsy results delivered a shocking revelation. Contrary to initial suspicions, no traces of pills were discovered in her stomach. However, the medical examiner's report uncovered a shocking clue: a small, red mark on the inside of her elbow. What was more shocking was that it was a pinprick mark. The small red mark on her arm was concerning because it suggested she may have been injected with something. This unexpected discovery led investigators to explore the significance of this mark and its potential connection to her death. Soon, the investigators discovered another thing from Maria's house. So what was that? A journal was found at Maria's place. As it was mentioned earlier, to cope with the anxiety and depression, she started writing a journal. And that journal helped investigators a lot to know who the culprit was. So, what they found in that journal was really heart-wrenching. In that journal, she wrote her thoughts and experiences. Through her writings, the investigators discovered that Maria loved her husband and wanted to preserve their family, even though she recognized his wish to be with someone else. She wrote, "I want it to stop. My past haunts me and I don't want to be sad anymore." In her journal entries, Maria detailed her heartbreak when Pellet left their Laredo home, leaving her to care for their 2 young sons. Her diary and recordings on her cell phone helped investigators uncover her husband's abusive behavior, documenting her emotional journey from grief to healing and a newfound optimism for the future. She also wrote in the journal, "My heart says one thing, my mind says something else. I am in this constant battle, tug of war. I want it to stop, but they won't. They keep me sad. And those are my tears. My future is foggy and unclear. My past haunts me, and my present is confusing. Lord, hear me cry. See my tears. Still my pain. Bring me laughter. Bring me peace. Bring me happiness again. I don't want to be sad anymore. I don't want my heart to hurt. I don't want my mind to be in torture, please. I beg you, O Lord." The day before her untimely death, Maria Munoz wrote the following in her journal. "What is it that I want? Number 1, move forward." The entries in Maria's journal the day before her death showed her desire to live and move forward with her life. There was no mention of suicide or any plans to end her life. So after going through her journal, the investigators didn't think she had committed suicide. They needed more information to understand what really happened. So this was what happened next. Pellet's previous employer, Dr. John Hunsinger, who was an anesthesiologist, became aware of the autopsy findings. He contacted the lead detective, De La Cruz, who was working on the case, and expressed his concerns. Dr. Hunsinger recommended that the investigators should conduct a comprehensive toxicology screening. So they did that. In January 2021, investigator Sergeant Luis Mata and De La Cruz received the long-awaited toxicology test results. Contrary to Pellet's claim of clonazepam, Maria did not have that drug in her system. However, the toxicology report revealed a shocking truth: the presence of 7 other drugs: morphine, Demerol, Versed, propofol, ketamine, lidocaine, and Narcan. These medications are commonly used in surgical procedures. Propofol and ketamine are used as sedatives and for pain management, often administered intravenously during surgical procedures. Most people cannot access these drugs easily, and even many nurses and other medical professionals may never come into contact with medications like propofol and ketamine unless they work directly in anesthesiology. The presence of propofol in Maria's body was the most shocking finding for the investigators. The investigators thought that Pellet is a nurse anesthetist, so he would have access to propofol based on his profession. When Dr. Hunsinger, who worked with Pellet and had experience using propofol, saw the amount found in Maria's system, he said it was the highest quantity he had ever encountered. Based on this, the doctors strongly believed that propofol was the specific cause of Maria's death, as Pellet would know the appropriate dosage to sedate someone or cause an overdose. Additionally, a small mark on Maria's arm indicated that she may have been injected with the substance. Investigators believed that, with the toxicological report, Pellet's suspicious behavior, and Maria's journal, they had enough evidence to arrest Pellet for the murder of his wife. So authorities soon got an arrest warrant against Pellet. De La Cruz wasted no time and went to arrest Pellet. Surprisingly, he did not resist arrest, almost as if he had anticipated and accepted his impending fate. Soon he was taken to the police station, marking the beginning of a new chapter in the investigation, as law enforcement officials prepared to question him again about the events surrounding Maria Munoz's tragic death. He had to face the consequences of his heinous act. So the trial started on March 21, 2023. As the legal proceedings unfolded, both the prosecution and defense presented their cases. A prosecution team composed entirely of women, known as Maria's team, utilized Maria Munoz's journal entries to construct a compelling case against Pellet. This was done to illustrate to the jury the type of wife and mother Maria was. The prosecutors described Maria as an excellent mother who was caring and intelligent. They expressed feeling her vibrant spirit through the pages of her journal. During that trial, the prosecutors also suspected that Pellet first drugged Maria by putting some substances in her drink to make her sleepy. Once she was unconscious, he injected propofol into her arm. Prosecutors also believed that Pellet waited a long time before calling 911 so that the first responders would not be able to revive her when they arrived. The prosecutors stated that the journals helped them comprehend the challenges Maria faced, which in turn fueled their determination to seek justice in her case. During the final arguments, Pellet's lawyer, Roberto Bali, informed the jurors that his client wanted to work things out with his wife, Maria Munoz, before her passing. Bali reminded the jury about the medical examiner's report, which said Maria's cause of death was still unclear. He told them there was not enough proof to show Pellet was responsible for her death. Bali pointed out that Pellet had given Maria a drug called Narcan on the night she died, which is used to reverse overdoses. He even said both Pellet and Munoz struggled with drug addiction. Bali also argued that Maria Munoz willingly consumed the drugs without coercion, as there were no signs of force on her body. However, after investigating Maria's social circles, friends, and family, it became clear that she was not a drug addict, and Pellet was the only person who could have provided her with that substantial quantity of propofol. Authorities were also able to convince Pellet's girlfriend, surgical nurse Janet Arredondo, to testify against him. She revealed that he had admitted to her that he gave Maria something to calm her down, and confirmed that he had brought drugs, including propofol, home from work. The jury took less than 1 hour to reach the verdict. At last, after a 9-day trial on March 30, 2023, a jury reached a verdict, finding Pellet guilty of the murder of his wife, Maria. On April 27, 2023, Pellet received a life sentence for the murder conviction, plus an additional 10 years and a $10,000 fine for tampering with evidence. So where is Pellet now? Joel Pellet is currently serving a life sentence at a Texas Department of Criminal Justice, facing the consequences of his heinous actions. His imprisonment stands as a symbol of accountability and a solemn tribute to Maria's life, ensuring that her memory is honored through the pursuit of truth and the upholding of justice. The motive behind the killing is unclear, but according to the prosecution, Joel Pellet's motive for killing his wife, Maria Munoz, was rooted in his desire to end his marriage and be with his girlfriend, Janet Arredondo. Ultimately, justice had to be served, and the verdict ensured that Pellet was held accountable for his actions. The jury's decision brings some measure of closure to this tragic case, affirming that such heinous acts will not go unpunished. The conviction underscores the importance of upholding justice and sends a clear message that those who commit such crimes will face the full extent of the law. Ashley Harmon was a beautiful, smart, high-energy person. However, when her parents divorced when she was 9, that proved to be a difficult time for her. During that period, Ashley transformed into a mother-like figure for her 5 siblings, and she protected them. For Ashley, there was nothing more important than her faith. She was a devout Mormon and belonged to the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints. When times got tough for Ashley in her life, she always relied on her faith in God. Her faith provided her with strength and solace in even the most challenging situations. Ashley's unwavering belief in God gave her a sense of peace and resilience, enabling her to overcome obstacles and face any difficulties with determination and courage. In 2003, when Ashley was attending Utah State as a human development major, she met Emmett Corrigan, a philosophy student. Like Ashley, Emmett's parents separated when he was 10, and he struggled with the aftermath before finding solace in the Mormon faith. Although Emmett was not born into the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints, at the age of 17, he was baptized into the church in front of his family and friends. Ashley initially found Emmett to be cute, and he reciprocated those feelings. Emmett was drawn to Ashley's intelligence, and he found himself captivated by her from the moment they met. He shared with his closest friends that he knew Ashley was the one he wanted to marry. Their relationship progressed steadily, and several months after meeting during Christmas in 2008, Emmett proposed to Ashley. She happily accepted his proposal, and the couple set their sights on a wedding. Emmett and Ashley's wedding took place in a Mormon temple, and the ceremony was a testament to their shared beliefs. The newlyweds were overjoyed as they embarked on a new life together. Their marriage was a source of stability and happiness. The Mormon faith holds marriage in high regard and emphasizes its importance as a sacred and eternal union. Followers of Mormonism believe that the bond between husband and wife extends beyond this life and persists even after death. Divorce, while discouraged, is only allowed in extreme circumstances and under specific circumstances. In 2005, Ashley and Emmett welcomed twin daughters into their lives. They were overjoyed at the opportunity to become parents and experience the joy of parenthood. Emmett embraced his new role as a father, enjoying every moment spent with his little girls. Ashley, on the other hand, was thrilled to finally live the life she had always envisioned. At the time, Ashley and Emmett were attending college at Utah State University. They managed to find a good balance between taking care of their babies and pursuing their educational goals. Although there were undoubtedly difficult times, they relied on their faith and love for one another to overcome any challenges they faced. With their unwavering determination, they persevered and continued to strive for a better future. In 2009, Emmett graduated from Utah State University with high honors, attended law school, and passed the bar, which led him to pursuing a career as a bankruptcy attorney. During this time, Ashley decided to continue staying at home to care for their growing family. While Emmett focused on building his career, Ashley dedicated herself to managing the household and nurturing their 4 children. To the outside world, the Corrigan family seemed to have an ideal life. They lived in a beautiful house with multiple children and a fulfilling career for Emmett. However, appearances can be deceiving. In August 2010, Emmett began to feel the pressure to provide for his family. With 4 young children under the age of 5, the financial demands became overwhelming. Emmett made the decision to start his own business, specializing in criminal defense. One of Emmett's friends introduced him to Candy Hall, a paralegal who once worked for a criminal attorney and had a good reputation. Emmett and Candy met at a lunch date and hit it off, leading to Emmett hiring her for his criminal defense firm. Candy Hall, Emmett's assistant, was married to a man named Robert Hall. By all accounts, Rob Hall was an amazing father and hard worker. When Candy was hired to work for Emmett Corrigan, she was excited. Initially, her husband and children were happy for her. As time went on, Ashley, Emmett's wife, began to notice changes in their marriage. Due to the stress of building a business and supporting their large family, Emmett's responsibilities weighed heavily on his shoulders. As a release, Emmett started to spend a lot of time at the gym working out. Going to the gym became like an addiction to Emmett, and he started to go at times when it wasn't convenient for his wife Ashley, who was home all the time with the 4 children alone. On January 15, 2011, Ashley and Emmett, despite growing distance between them, welcomed their 5th child, a son. However, Emmett's attentiveness towards their son differed from the dedication he showed during the birth of their other children. From the moment the baby came home, Emmett began spending increasing amounts of time away, sometimes overnight. In a conversation with her sister, Ashley confided that she was genuinely concerned about Emmett's activities. She feared he may be cheating on her. On the other hand, Emmett's assistant, Candy Hall, was also experiencing marital issues. Candy confided in a friend that her husband, Rob, was jealous of her working for a young and charismatic man like Emmett. The couple's constant fighting was taking a toll on their marriage. On March 6, 2011, Ashley and Emmett were celebrating their 7th wedding anniversary, but Emmett wasn't at home. Emmett informed Ashley that he was going to visit a bodybuilding convention, leaving Ashley home alone with the children. Her husband's behavior left Ashley feeling panicked and concerned about the state of her marriage. She wondered if there was something she was doing wrong as a wife that made Emmett unhappy. Divorce was not an option for Ashley, so she decided to endure this difficult period in her marriage with Emmett. Determined to make things better, Ashley decided to confront the situation head-on. Several days later, on March 11th, Ashley woke up with a strong determination to create unity in her home. She knew she had to fix her relationship with her husband, Emmett. Ashley spent the entire day planning the perfect day, making sure that every aspect of it was perfect. She prepared his favorite meal, cleaned the house, and ensured that the children were on their best behavior. Because Emmett was to home from work at 6 p.m., Ashley had the table set and ready to greet him. However, he didn't arrive until 2 hours later. When Ashley went to meet Emmett with a kiss, he turned away from her. Despite Emmett's coldness and the distance that had formed between them, Ashley was resolved to make her husband love her again. She knew that their love was worth fighting for and was determined to do whatever it took to rebuild their relationship. 2 hours after Ashley had finished preparing their dinner, the whole family gathered around the table to eat. Emmett, however, claimed that he was not hungry, despite his wife's evident effort and attention to detail. Ashley had clearly invested a significant amount of time, thought, and love into the meal, but Emmett's lack of interest left Ashley feeling disappointed in her. As the rest of the Corrigan family enjoyed their meal, Emmett suddenly stood up, announcing that he needed to drive to Walgreens. He insisted that he would be right back, seemingly oblivious to Ashley's growing concern. Ashley realized that there must be something else going on behind Emmett's actions, and she pleaded with him to stay and connect with her. She reminded him of the importance of their family. However, Emmett's response to Ashley's pleas was harsh and dismissive. Emmett told her that she should not tell him what to do, and then proceeded to leave the house, leaving Ashley feeling confused and hurt. On that same day, another problem was brewing in Emmett's life. His assistant, Candy, and Rob Hall, her husband, had reached the breaking point in their marriage. Rob was packing his things and made the decision to leave their home. Despite their love for each other, Rob believed that it was best to remove himself from the situation and start anew. That evening, Rob called his daughter and asked if she was out in Candy's car. His daughter informed him that she was not. Several minutes later, Rob's daughter drove past Walgreens and noticed her mother's car in the parking lot. Not giving it much thought, she promptly called her father to inform him of her discovery. Rob's initial response was simply, "Oh, okay." Little did they know that this seemingly innocuous phone call was about to alter the course of two families forever. Meanwhile, Ashley laid in bed, her heart heavy with worry, as she prayed fervently for her marriage to work. She had continued to text and call Emmett, desperately trying to reach him, but to no avail. Her gut was telling her something was amiss, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Around 10 p.m., a 911 call, alerting dispatch to reports of gunshots and a woman screaming in the Walgreens parking lot. The police quickly mobilized, unsure of what awaited them at the scene. Was this a random drive-by shooting, a drug deal gone wrong, a robbery, or something else entirely? They had no idea what to expect as they cautiously approached the scene. When the first officer stepped out of the patrol car, his eyes were met with a chilling sight. A man lay lifeless on the ground. A second person, still alive but wounded, grasping his head in pain, was there as well. The injured man was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound, leaving the police with more questions than answers. Amidst the chaos, there was one woman who police wanted to speak with. Her name is Candy Hall, and she was present at the crime scene. Candy identified the man at the hospital as her husband, Rob, and the man dead on the ground as her boss, Emmett. Emmett had been shot twice in the head and chest. Not long after Emmett was found dead at the Walgreens parking lot, Ashley, his wife, was woken up to knocking on her front door. When Ashley answered the door, she saw police officers outside, who told her that her husband, Emmett, was dead. He had been shot and didn't make it. Ashley was stunned and inconsolable, and had no idea what could have happened that led to this. After the police told Ashley her husband had been killed, a detective asked her if she knew who Rob and Candy Hall were. Ashley said she knew Candy was Emmett's assistant, but suspected she and Emmett had been having an affair. Candy Hall was taken to the police department from the Walgreens parking lot and questioned by the detectives, who were trying to get a clear picture of what went down that led to Emmett being killed and Rob being shot in the head. The detectives asked Candy if she and her boss, Emmett, had a relationship, but she said no. When asked if they ever had intercourse, Candy adamantly denied it. According to Candy, she had driven to Walgreens that night to pick up a prescription. Candy explained that she and Emmett had a coincidental meeting in the store, and they decided to go for a drive in Emmett's car. As they drove to a gas station, Candy's phone rang. It was Rob, her estranged husband. Candy informed Rob that she was out with Emmett. However, the conversation took a dark turn when Rob expressed his jealousy and threatened to shatter Emmett's head open. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Candy and Emmett arrived at Walgreens. As they stepped out of the car, Candy's heart sank as she saw Rob standing at the entrance, his anger clearly visible on his face. A heated argument ensued, and a physical fight between Rob and Emmett erupted. Suddenly, Candy heard 3 sharp pops. She turned to see both men lying on the ground. Candy spotted the gun lying on the ground and picked it up and tossed it aside. When the detectives asked Candy who fired the first shots, Rob or Emmett, she said she had no idea. The gunshot wound to Rob Hall's head was superficial. After the doctors stitched him up, the detectives went to question him. During the detectives' interview with Rob, they told him they found a gun at the crime scene and asked him who it belonged to. Rob admitted the gun was his and said he and Emmett got into a fight in the Walgreens parking lot, and at one point the gun fell from his pocket. Once the gun was on the ground, Rob alleged that Emmett dove for it, and then a struggle for the weapon started and Emmett shot him in the head. He said he didn't know who shot Emmett during the fight for the gun. Because Rob had a head wound from the gunshot, the detectives were not surprised he couldn't remember much. However, the detectives found themselves questioning if Emmett was the one who shot first, considering he ended up dead. Since the shooting had taken place in the Walgreens parking lot, the detectives turned to the security footage for answers. While reviewing the footage, the detectives noticed Rob Hall arriving in the parking lot at 9:55 p.m. 1 minute later, Rob was seen entering the Walgreens store and rushing through each aisle, seemingly searching for someone. The security footage captured Rob exiting the Walgreens at 10:06 p.m. and parking his car in a spot beside Candy's. He proceeded to wait there for the next few minutes. Approximately 10 minutes later, Emmett's truck appeared on the footage as it pulled into the parking lot. However, the shooting was not caught on camera. Candy, Emmett's assistant, initially denied being in a romantic relationship with her boss. However, the whispers among their co-workers suggested otherwise. According to their co-workers, Candy and Rob were seen spending a lot of time in his office, with the door closed, a mere 3 weeks after she was hired. On the day Emmett was shot, detectives stumbled upon a curious discovery. Emmett had accompanied Candy to the public defender's office to discuss divorcing Rob. During their investigation into the murder of Emmett Corrigan, the crime scene investigators conducted a search of Emmett's vehicle in the parking lot and discovered steroids in the glove compartment. Many of Emmett's loved ones were not surprised by this discovery. Because Emmett had been heavily focused on bodybuilding and his behavior was different, some of them believed that he was using steroids. When Candy gave her statement to the detectives, she described a peculiar shot cadence that led them to believe that Rob shot and killed Emmett 2 times before turning the gun around and shooting himself in the head. This evidence was sufficient for the detectives to obtain an arrest warrant for Rob Hall, charging him with first-degree murder. Rob Hall was subsequently arrested and charged with the murder of Emmett Corrigan. The consequences of Rob Hall's actions were severe. If convicted of first-degree murder, he faced either life in prison without parole or the death penalty. When it came time for Rob Hall to stand trial for the murder of Emmett, Ashley, Emmett's wife, hoped that the trial would bring some closure to her grieving process. Ashley believed that obtaining answers about her husband's affair and death would provide a sense of closure. Prosecutors alleged that Rob was angry at Emmett for having an affair with Rob's wife, Candy, and blamed Emmett for running his marriage into the ground. According to the prosecution, Rob shot Emmett and then decided to take his own life. However, Rob Hall's defense told a different story. Rob's attorneys claimed that Emmett was the aggressor on the night he died. They alleged that Emmett had a history of steroid abuse and somehow during the altercation, Emmett got hold of Rob's gun and shot Rob before Rob regained possession of the weapon and killed Emmett in self-defense. One of the key witnesses in Rob Hall's trial was his wife, Candy Hall. Candy's testimony during her husband's trial slightly differed from the account she gave to the police on the night Emmett was killed. While on the witness stand, Candy claimed that instead of hearing 2 gunshots in quick succession followed by another, She heard a pop, then two more fast pops. This new version of events favored the defense's argument that Emmett shot Rob Hall first before Rob got the gun back and shot Emmett 2 times, killing him. The prosecutors needed to convince the jury that Rob and not Emmett was the shooter in the Walgreens parking lot. To support this theory, they presented forensic evidence alleging that the type of weapon used to kill Emmett and wound Rob accumulates a significant amount of gunshot residue, GSR, after it has been fired. Following the shooting, investigators performed a gunshot residue test on Rob and Emmett. The results of the test showed that Rob's left palm contained 32 GSR particles while his right palm had 23 particles. On the other hand, Emmett had 1 GSR particle on his left hand and 0 on his right. These test results indicated beyond a shadow of a doubt that Rob was the one who fired the gun 3 times. Emmett never had possession of the weapon according to the forensic evidence. After careful consideration, the jury found Rob Hall not guilty of first-degree murder. However, they did reach a unanimous decision that he was guilty of second-degree murder. This determination meant that the murder was not premeditated. The judge presiding over the case sentenced Rob to 30 years in prison. Rob will be eligible for parole in 2028 when he is 58 years old. Despite the conviction, Rob has maintained his innocence and appealed his conviction. In 2021, Rob Hall's conviction was reaffirmed by the Idaho Supreme Court, denying him a retrial. Candy Hall was arrested and criminally charged 2 months after Emmett's murder with embezzlement for allegedly stealing money from the attorney who employed her before she started working at Emmett's office. The embezzlement charges were unrelated to Emmett's murder. Candy pleaded guilty to grand theft, a lesser charge than the original embezzlement allegations. She was sentenced to a term of imprisonment and was released in 2014 on parole. However, she currently remains on probation until 2026. In a candid interview with Dateline, Candy Hall expressed deep feelings of guilt regarding the incident and admitted that much of it stems from the impact it has had on her relationships with her children. The strain in these relationships has deepened, and she expressed her uncertainty about how they will be able to navigate through the lies she told to their family. Candy expressed her hope that one day, she will be able to prove to them that it was all a regrettable mistake. Ashley faced a challenging journey in coming to terms with the fact that her husband, Emmett, was murdered by his lover's husband. In a 2015 interview on Drive Phil, Ashley came face to face with Emmett's lover, Candy Hall, for the first time. Despite the emotional pain she felt, Ashley was determined to move on and create a new story for her life. As a result, she made the decision to close the book on her old life and move forward. The first step in this process was to move out of the town where she and Emmett used to live with their 5 children. Over time, the children gradually adjusted to this change and began to find joy in their lives again. Eventually, Ashley remarried and had 2 more children. Ashley blogs for victims of trauma. Katrina Ashley Edlund was born on July 16, 1982. She was the youngest child of her mother, Vicky. Katrina had 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda. As a child, Miranda looked up to her older sister, Katrina. Miranda often tried on Katrina's clothes and used her makeup as she admired and wanted to be just like her. Over the years, Miranda and Katrina developed a deep bond and became more like best friends than sisters. When Katrina was young, her parents separated and she lived with her mother. Katrina was raised in McChesney Park, Illinois, a bedroom community located outside of the city. Those who knew Katrina described her as a kind-hearted and fun-loving individual. Katrina particularly cherished the holiday season and thoroughly enjoyed giving gag gifts to her friends and family. Overall, Katrina was very happy and deeply involved in her church. She had a strong desire to help others and was more than willing to offer her time to anyone in need. Even though Katrina was happy, she still yearned to find love and believed she had met her Prince Charming when she encountered Todd Smith at a bar at age 20. Todd, a successful financial planner who owned his own business and worked out of his home, had 3 daughters. Despite their differences, the couple hit it off, and Todd's work flexibility allowed them to travel extensively. 3 years into their relationship, Todd proposed to Katrina, which she happily accepted. The couple planned an intimate ceremony in a local park, and Katrina was ecstatic about their future together. She loved her stepdaughters and was eager to build a bright future with Todd. Moreover, Katrina's mother, Vicky, and her siblings, Chad and Miranda, loved Todd and considered him a great guy. They trusted him to take care of Katrina and believed the duo was a perfect match. Following their marriage, Katrina and Todd settled in McChesney Park, where they began their life together. On October 20, 2012, Katrina Smith, a 30-year-old woman, called her mother, Vicky, and told her she was house-sitting for a friend. During their conversation, Katrina mentioned that she would be coming over for dinner on October 24th and had news to share with her mother. Vicky sensed something was going on, but she wasn't sure what it could be. Before hanging up the phone, Vicky promised to cook Katrina's favorite dish, chicken and dumplings. However, she would never have the opportunity to fulfill that promise. Several days after that phone call, Katrina disappeared, and Vicky would never see her again. At 5 p.m. on October 23rd, Todd Smith contacted 911 to report the disappearance of his wife, Katrina Smith. Todd informed the dispatcher that Katrina was house-sitting for a friend, and he had been unable to reach her for several hours. He stated that the house was empty when he drove to where she was staying. Miranda and Chad, Katrina's sister and brother, became concerned when they learned of her disappearance. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to assist in the search for his sister. On the night of the 23rd, a resident called the police to report an abandoned vehicle near Rock River. According to the resident, the car was not parked on the roadside, but was in an easement, as if it had been abandoned in a hurry. When police arrived to investigate the vehicle, they ran the license plate and discovered it belonged to Katrina Smith. Upon examining the car, the police officer found no sign of a struggle or Katrina. When Katrina's mother, Vicky, heard the news that her daughter's car had been found abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road in an unfamiliar area, she knew that something bad had happened to her daughter. It was the only plausible explanation that made sense to Vicky. If Katrina's car was in that area, someone had taken her and parked the car there. After Katrina's car was found, her case was officially classified as a missing person, and the search for her intensified. At 11 p.m. on October 12th, the police took Todd Smith to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for a formal interview. During the interview, Todd disclosed to the detective that he had last seen his wife, Katrina, on October 22nd. Todd claimed Katrina returned home for a short while to do laundry, because she had a big job interview the following day. As the laundry was going, Todd explained to the detective that Katrina left to go to the mall to buy something, and returned home at 8:30 p.m. However, Todd mentioned that Katrina quickly left the house again to go out for a final time. Todd stated that Katrina had informed him she had one last stop to make before returning to the house. She was house-sitting for a friend. The day after Katrina was classified as a missing person, Todd Smith took to the media to plead for his wife's safe return. In a heart-wrenching and emotional appeal, Todd broke down in tears as he expressed his desperate desire to find his wife, Katrina. He appealed to the public, asking anyone who knew anything about Katrina's whereabouts to come forward and share information. As the hours passed, the search for Katrina intensified, and search crews, consisting of officers and volunteers, dedicated their time and effort to locate the missing woman. Their efforts focused specifically on a park located near the spot where Katrina's car had been abandoned. The investigators hoped that any evidence or clues regarding her disappearance could be found in the vicinity. When Chad, Katrina's brother, arrived in Illinois from his army training in Oklahoma, everyone met him at the park to search for Katrina. Chad, using his military training, took control of the search party. He charted and plotted on a map and divided the volunteers who had come to look for Katrina into teams. Chad got people out looking, ensuring that a thorough search was conducted. As the officers searched the park, they used dogs and stood side by side, walking in a straight line. This tactic was used to cover as much ground as possible and ensure that they did not miss any items of evidence, no matter how small. The officers took every precaution to ensure they did not overlook anything in their quest to find Katrina. Katrina's mother, Vicky, hung up missing person flyers for Katrina all around town. She left these flyers at gas stations, convenience stores, and lampposts. Vicky's main objective was to spread awareness and ensure that as many people as possible were informed about Katrina's disappearance. However, due to her overwhelming grief and fear of finding her daughter's body, Vicky was unable to participate in the search. Throughout this difficult time, Todd, Katrina's husband, remained emotional. Chad encouraged Todd to stay strong, reminding him that they needed to remain focused on finding Katrina. He stood by Todd's side the entire time, feeling awful for his grieving brother-in-law. An officer discovered Katrina's purse where her car was found. As he continued down the road from where her car was found, he found additional items that belonged to her. Among these were her cell phone and towels that appeared to be used to clean blood. It became clear that someone had been disposing of Katrina's belongings as they moved away from her abandoned vehicle. Unfortunately, the police had no clue about where Katrina was at that point. However, they suspected something bad had happened to her. The items found on the side of the road were taken to the crime lab for testing, and the police eagerly awaited the results of their investigation. In the meantime, the police began delving into Katrina's personal life, in search of any clues that could explain her disappearance. As the officers delved into the investigation of Katrina's disappearance, they aimed to gain a comprehensive understanding of every facet of her life. This digging involved examining whether Katrina had any relationships outside of her marriage, investigating any potential involvement in gambling or drug activities, and meticulously documenting her daily routines. The officers interviewed Katrina's friends and family extensively to gather this crucial information. These individuals unanimously described Katrina as a kind-hearted, responsible individual who consistently prioritized her responsibilities and avoided engaging in any questionable activities. Katrina's loved ones expressed that she was known for her dedication to her work and for maintaining a strong work ethic. According to their testimonies, she never exhibited any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. In fact, they described her as a dedicated spouse and a hardworking woman who never compromised her integrity. During the search for Katrina, a woman provided an intriguing tip. According to this woman, she had witnessed a blue vehicle matching the description of Katrina's car, stopped on a bridge over Rock River on the night of her disappearance. The trunk of the car was open and she could see a person kneeling behind it. However, the woman was unable to provide any specific details, such as the person's gender or race. When the woman came forward and reported this incident to the police, the officers began to consider the possibility that Katrina may have ended up in the river through foul play. However, they still lacked concrete evidence to support this theory. Officers knew that they needed to investigate further to see if anyone had the motive to harm Katrina. Despite claims that Katrina and her husband, Todd, were happily married, Todd remained a subject of interest. The authorities had doubts, as there was always the possibility of hidden conflicts or secrets within the marriage. The investigation into Katrina's disappearance continued, and the police received information that led them to a suspect. They learned that there was a boy in town who exhibited an obsession with Katrina. This obsession went back to earlier in the year, when Katrina confided in her friends about a teenage boy from her church who exhibited an unhealthy obsession with her. It was alleged that the boy had been involved in acts of voyeurism, specifically targeting Katrina by spying on her through her bedroom window. Katrina grew increasingly nervous during this time due to the teenager's behavior. However, the peeping activities eventually ceased when the teenager moved away for college. The police became suspicious and wondered if the teenager had returned home at some point and resumed stalking Katrina. As a result, they dedicated significant resources to track him down. 3 days into the search for Katrina, her cell phone, which was examined at the crime lab, revealed crucial clues. The phone turned out to be a treasure trove of information for the investigating officers. By investigating Katrina's cell phone, they gained valuable insights into her text messages, incoming and outgoing calls, pictures, videos, and even her GPS location. Katrina's phone data provided the police with a wealth of knowledge, enabling them to piece together a clearer picture of Katrina's activities. For instance, they discovered that she was having an extramarital affair with a coworker named Guy Gabriel. The relationship between Katrina and Guy Gabriel began innocently enough. They initially met after work one night and hit it off. Their connection grew stronger and they became romantically involved. However, the detective's background check on Guy Gabriel revealed a darker side. Officers discovered that Guy Gabriel had a history of domestic violence. Moreover, the detectives stumbled upon text messages sent by Guy Gabriel to Katrina, demanding that she leave her husband Todd for him. Because of Guy Gabriel's history of violence and his messages to Katrina, he became the prime suspect in her disappearance. The police thought it was possible Guy Gabriel got mad at Katrina for not leaving her husband for him and reacted violently. When Katrina's family found out that she had been having an affair on Todd, they were completely taken aback. Everyone had long believed Katrina and Todd were the epitome of an ideal and happy couple. To discover that Katrina had engaged in such betrayal left everyone in shock and disbelief. Todd, who had no idea about his wife's affair until the police investigation revealed it, was shattered. The news that his wife had been unfaithful hit him hard. Guy Gabriel met the police investigating Katrina's disappearance at the police department for a formal interview. During the interview, Guy appeared nervous, although he did admit to having an affair with Katrina. However, Guy denied having any involvement in Katrina's disappearance. According to Guy, he was at work the night Katrina went missing. While the police investigated Katrina's affair with her coworker, Guy Gabriel, they learned about an incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina went missing. Witnesses told the police that it was lunchtime at the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, and as all the workers stood outside chatting, a black Volkswagen Jetta sped through the parking lot. The masked driver threw a stack of flyers through the car's open sunroof. These papers fell from the sky and landed at everyone's feet as the employees gathered outside. As the car sped away, the workers picked up the documents and said they were flyers with a derogatory statement about Katrina and Guy Gabriel's relationship. However, no one knew who the driver of the VW Jetta was. When the police questioned Katrina's hairstylist, she revealed that Katrina had confided in her about feeling unsafe and expressing a desire to purchase a gun to protect herself. Katrina had expressed concerns that someone was following her and even went to a store to have her phone checked for a tracking device. At the police garage, crime scene investigators examined Katrina's car for evidence. One of the tools the investigators employed was luminol, a chemical compound that reacts with blood to produce a bright glow. The luminol revealed the presence of a significant amount of blood in the trunk of Katrina's car. The investigators turned their attention to the front seat of Katrina's car. Once again, they sprayed luminol to reveal more bloodstains, which further solidified their suspicions. Furthermore, upon examining the undercarriage of Katrina's car, the investigators discovered remnants of a GPS tracker. Through examination and analysis, it was confirmed that the blood found in the car was Katrina's. This confirmation, combined with the volume of blood found, led the police to an alarming conclusion. The amount of blood found convinced them that Katrina may no longer be alive. 18 days after Katrina went missing, the police department received a call from an off-duty fireman on Rock River. This fireman was fishing and saw something in the river that he thought a log had taken. However, when he drove his boat closer for a better look, he realized that the object was a body. The fire department was called in to recover the body, and upon pulling it from the water, they discovered that it was a female body. However, it was initially difficult to determine the identity of the body, as it had severely decomposed. They had no idea if it was Katrina Smith or not. The body was then transported to the medical examiner's office, where the staff performed an autopsy to determine the cause of death. In order to identify the remains, dental records were provided to a county dental expert. After examination, the expert matched the teeth from the body to those in Katrina Smith's records, and concluded that the body pulled from the river was indeed that of Katrina Smith. Katrina's cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. When Katrina's family learned her body had been found and she had been murdered by blunt force trauma to her head, they all broke down and cried. This news was devastating, and their emotions overwhelmed them as they processed the magnitude of what had happened. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was in disbelief when she heard the news. The knowledge that her daughter had been violently beaten in the head was unbearable for Vicky. Officers tracked down the teenage boy who had been allegedly stalking Katrina, and cleared him as a suspect after they confirmed his alibi that he had been on campus at his college during the time of Katrina's disappearance and murder. This confirmation eliminated him as a viable suspect, and the police turned their attention to Katrina's boyfriend outside of her marriage, Guy Gabriel. Guy Gabriel told the police he had an alibi for the night Katrina disappeared. He stated that he had been at work during that time. To support his claim, Guy's managers provided their time card, which confirmed that Guy had been at work that night. Additionally, several co-workers corroborated Guy's alibi, stating that they had seen him at their workplace. With Guy Gabriel's alibi confirmed, the police were no longer suspicious of his involvement in Katrina's disappearance and murder. Although Guy Gabriel was no longer a suspect, the police sought his perspective on who may have hurt Katrina. Guy divulged that Katrina's husband, Todd, exhibited controlling behavior, which led him to encourage Katrina to leave her marriage. He believed that Todd's controlling nature could have escalated and led to physical harm. As police delved deeper into Katrina's marriage with Todd Smith, several concerning details emerged. Firstly, it was discovered that Katrina had expressed a desire to divorce Todd to several people. Furthermore, the police confirmed that Katrina had met with a divorce attorney the day prior to her disappearance. Despite Katrina's claim that she was house-sitting at a friend's condo, the officers discovered she had moved in because she and Todd had separated. After gathering information and conducting interviews, the police suspected Todd of being behind the mysterious flyer incident at Katrina's workplace. This suspicion grew stronger when officers discovered that Todd had test-driven a black VW Jetta, the same model and color as the car involved in the flyer incident. The timing of these events also raised suspicion, as Todd allegedly took the test drive around the same time the incident occurred. When the police informed Katrina's family that not only was Todd the prime suspect in her murder, but also that he was already in custody, they were completely shocked and in disbelief. They had loved and respected Todd, considering him more than just an in-law. The news left everyone feeling devastated. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was particularly affected. The realization that her daughter's husband could be responsible for her murder left her physically ill. It was unimaginable to her that Todd could have done something so atrocious. Vicky had always trusted and respected Todd, and the idea that he could be capable of such a heinous crime never crossed her mind. The police received information regarding Todd's financial situation, as it was revealed that his financial investment company was facing legal troubles. With Todd out of work, Katrina was the breadwinner for the family. Based on this information, officers formulated a theory that if Katrina were to leave Todd and his daughters, the money would go with her. This realization may have led Todd to consider murdering his wife as a means to gain access to those funds. In order to gather evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for Todd and Katrina's home. During the search, investigators stumbled upon a baseball in a corner of the garage. Upon closer examination, they noticed traces of blood on the bat. This discovery led them to believe that it could very well be the weapon that was used to kill Katrina. The injuries she had sustained were blunt force trauma, which was consistent with a bat being used. The investigators conducted a DNA test on the bat to confirm their suspicions. This analysis confirmed that Katrina's blood was on the bat, solidifying the link between the murder weapon and the victim. Additionally, the investigators stumbled upon a large area underneath the car that had been meticulously cleaned. Upon further examination, they discovered that the bloodstains found under the vehicle matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina Smith was murdered, her husband, Todd Smith, was arrested and charged with her murder. His arrest came as a relief to her family. On January 11, 2017, Todd's trial began. The state presented its case to the jury, painting a vivid picture of the night Katrina was murdered. It was revealed that Katrina had recently met with a divorce attorney to discuss her marital problems. This meeting served as a starting point for the prosecution, as they argued that Katrina's decision to seek legal assistance indicated a troubled relationship. According to the state, Katrina had gone to Todd's house to do laundry in preparation for a job interview she had scheduled for the following morning. During her visit, the prosecution alleged that Katrina had made it clear to Todd that their marriage was truly over. This declaration, they argued, led to Todd reacting violently. The state alleged that while Katrina was in the garage, Todd, in a fit of rage, grabbed a baseball bat and mercilessly beat her to death. After ensuring Katrina's lifeless body, Todd allegedly proceeded to move her into the trunk of her car. He then drove to a remote location known as Rock River. There, he disposed of her body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. Following the disposal of Katrina's body, Todd abandoned her car on the side of the road. As he walked back home to wash away any evidence, he disposed of her cell phone and the bloody towels he had used to clean the garage. Jurors found Todd guilty and sentenced him to 55 years in prison. Becky and Tim Bleefnick met while attending Quincy University. Becky pursued a degree in biology and played tennis, while Tim made a name for himself as an all-star football player. Those who knew Tim well described him as a fun, goofy guy who always greeted people with a hug. His infectious energy and warm personality made him a favorite among his peers. On the other hand, Becky's friends described her as a happy person who lit up a room just by her presence. Her positive energy and radiant smile made her instantly approachable. Because Becky and Tim were both attractive people, they seemed to complement each other perfectly. Their physical appearance and chemistry together made them look like the ideal couple. 2 years after graduating from Quincy University, Becky and Tim decided to embark on a new chapter in their lives by getting married. As a practical couple, they prioritized saving money over extravagant expenses. Tim chose not to buy Becky an engagement ring and didn't plan a lavish honeymoon following their wedding. Instead, they decided to invest their savings in a down payment for their first home. Becky's dreams in life included pursuing a career as a doctor. However, she ultimately decided against following this career path. While she had a genuine interest in medicine, Becky felt a strong calling towards motherhood. She yearned to experience the joy and fulfillment that came with being a mother. Her dream of becoming a mother came true, and she and her husband, Tim, had 3 sons. Being a mother was the ultimate joy for Becky, and she cherished nothing more than being a mother to her 3 boys. Becky loved spending quality time with them and watching them grow and thrive. As the boys grew older, Becky chose to pursue her dreams and aspirations. She decided to go back to school and obtain a nursing degree. Tim Bleefnick had always been a performer. From his days in the community theater in Quincy to his hilarious social media videos, Tim had a knack for captivating audiences with his wit and charm. In 2008, he decided to take things further and tried out for American Gladiators. While he didn't make the cut to compete on the show, he did manage to reach the final round of auditions. With an insatiable drive for attention, Tim found another opportunity to showcase his talent. In September 2019, the producers of Family Feud reached out to him, inviting him and his family to participate in the popular game show. However, Becky's nursing school commitments prevented her from joining him on the show. Determined to make the most of the opportunity, Tim rallied his family, including his parents and brothers. The premise of Family Feud revolves around 2 teams of family members or friends competing against each other by guessing the answers of a survey of 100 people provided. Steve Harvey, the host of the popular game show Family Feud, asked Tim Bleefnick what he thought the most popular answer was to the question, "What was the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?" Tim, known for his witty humor, shocked Steve Harvey and the audience with his response. Tim replied, "Honey, I love you, but said I do." This statement caught everyone off guard and laughter filled the studio. Despite the unexpected nature of the response, it was ranked second on the scoreboard, earning points for Tim and his family. The Bleefnick family went on to participate in Family Feud for a 3-episode stint, ultimately winning a total of $20,000. This amount was divided among the family members, with each member receiving an equal share. However, there was one notable exclusion. Tim did not share any of the winnings with his wife, Becky. Despite Becky and Tim's years of marriage, their relationship had begun to strain. When Becky decided to pursue a career as a nurse, her husband Tim expressed strong opposition. Tim said his primary concern was Becky's well-being, as he worried about the stress associated with the nursing career. He believed that Becky had difficulties managing her patients and stress levels when it came to their children, and he wondered how this would affect her job performance. However, Becky's friends had a different perspective on Tim's opposition. They believed that Tim did not like Becky being independent and pursuing her interests out of his control. Over time, Becky's friends observed a decline in her happiness and her marriage. They observed that the initial 5 years of her marriage were relatively positive, but Tim's behavior became more manipulative and controlling. Becky's friends noted that, despite Becky dedicating substantial time and effort to her nursing studies and work, Tim failed to shoulder his fair share of responsibilities within the home. Tim neglected to clean and didn't help care for their sons. He left everything for Becky to take care of after her long days standing on her feet as a nurse. Becky, recognizing there was a strain in their marriage, felt the need to address it with Tim. She believed that attending marriage counseling could help them find solutions and restore harmony in their relationship. However, to her disappointment, Tim disagreed with attending counseling. Despite Becky's dedication to resolving the issues in their marriage, Tim had a different plan. In January 2021, after 11 years of marriage, Tim filed for divorce from Becky. This decision surprised Becky as she had shown determination and commitment in trying to save their marriage. However, Tim's decision was clear-cut as he moved out of the family home and into a house across town. Tim said that the reason behind his decision was a change in Becky's personality after becoming a nurse. He believed that her profession had taken a toll on her, resulting in a noticeable alteration in her demeanor. This change in Becky's personality, according to Tim, had a negative impact on their marriage. The divorce between Tim and Becky proved contentious. Tim and Becky were unable to find common ground, and their communication deteriorated. Both parties fought over various issues, including child custody, property division, and alimony. At a certain point, Tim applied for an order of protection against Becky. In this request, Tim stated that Becky had been stalking and harassing him and referenced an incident where Becky became combative during a verbal fight at a parent-teacher night conference at their son's school. As evidence, Tim produced a video that he had recorded on his phone, which depicted Becky pounding on the door of his car outside the school. However, Becky had a different perspective on the situation. She alleged that it was Tim who was engaging in the harassment. Becky shared her concerns with several of her friends through text messages. In these texts, she detailed various incidents where Tim had screamed in her face, shoved her in front of their sons, and even thrown things across the room. In a particularly distressing text to one friend, Becky expressed her belief that Tim had serious mental health problems and that he was becoming more vengeful and unpredictable. After one of Becky's co-workers was murdered by her partner, Becky became increasingly fearful for her safety. She began to believe that Tim, her partner, was capable of committing a similar act against her. As a result, Becky texted her sister, saying that if any harm were to befall her, Tim would be the number one person of interest. Becky's concerns were fueled by the fact that she feared that Tim would resort to drastic measures to separate her from her children. The text message left Becky's sister deeply concerned for Becky's well-being. She knew that Becky's fears were valid and that she needed to seek assistance. In an effort to protect Becky's life, her sister implored her to visit a domestic violence resource center. Eventually, Becky decided to file an order of protection against Tim. In her request, Becky claimed that Tim had entered her home without permission and had falsified their interactions. As a judge reviewed Tim and Becky's orders of protection, he determined not to grant either one. The judge ordered Tim and Becky to stay away from each other's homes except when they exchanged custody of their children. However, in February 2023, Tim called the Quincy Police Department and informed them that he would not be returning the gun to Becky. According to Tim, he didn't want to give the gun to that crazy bitch. On February 22, 2023, Becky and Tim's 3 sons, aged 12, 10, and 5, were spending the night with Tim at his home, 1 mile from where Becky was living. The divorce between Becky and Tim was set to be finalized in just 1 week. Tim reached out to Becky's father the following day, explaining that he had not been able to get in touch with Becky and that Becky had failed to pick the boys up from school as she was supposed to. Knowing how dedicated Becky was as a mother, her father knew that something must have happened to prevent her from fulfilling her parental responsibilities. Prompted by his concern for Becky's well-being, Becky's father immediately drove to her house. Upon arriving, he made entry and walked around, shouting Becky's name. Hearing no response, he went up the stairs and entered Becky's bedroom. Inside the room, he noticed something disturbing. Becky was lying face up in a pool of blood, covered in gunshot wounds. Detectives and crime scene investigators arrived at Becky's house after her father discovered her bloody and lifeless body face up in the bathroom. Upon their arrival, the investigators began their investigation by carefully examining the outside of Becky's home. After a thorough search, they identified that the suspected perpetrator gained entry by prying open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. This discovery led them to believe that the suspect utilized a patio chair to facilitate their entry into the house and climb up to the roof. Investigators followed the path they believed the suspect had taken. They walked towards Becky's bedroom, where they appeared violently kicked down or broken. The broken state of the bedroom door indicated to the investigators that the suspect had forcibly entered the room, most likely searching for Becky. Evidence suggested that Becky had attempted to barricade herself in the bathroom, but the suspect had followed her and caught up to her. However, the suspect followed her and caught up to her, ultimately shooting her inside the bathroom. The investigators, while conducting their search around the bathroom where Becky's body was found, stumbled upon her cell phone. Upon examination of Becky's phone, they discovered that she had dialed 9-1-1-2-6 at 1 to 11 a.m. This discovery led the investigators to form a theory about what had happened that night. They believed that as the suspect was chasing her through the house, she desperately tried to call for help but mistakenly dialed the wrong number. Before Becky had a chance to try to call 911 again, the investigators thought the suspect knocked the phone out of her hand. Because the misdialed call occurred at 1 to 11 a.m., investigators believed that Becky was likely killed around that time. However, when officers canvassed Becky's neighborhood, no one recalled hearing any noises around that time. The lack of witnesses raised suspicions among the investigators, as Becky had suffered multiple gunshot wounds, making it unlikely for someone not to have heard something. As investigators conducted a thorough search of Becky's house, it quickly became apparent that her murder was not the result of a botched burglary, since nothing was missing. Despite the absence of any stolen items, the perpetrator left a significant amount of evidence behind. One notable discovery was a partial shoe print discovered near the spot where the suspect entered the premises. The shoe print could help identify the make and model of the footwear worn by the suspect and provide details about the size and shape of their feet. Furthermore, the investigators stumbled upon 8 9mm shell casings at the scene. Additionally, the investigators noticed small pieces of shredded plastic scattered across the floor near Becky's body. With all these pieces of evidence collected, the investigators were uncertain what to make of their findings. Therefore, they decided to send the collected evidence to forensic laboratories for analysis. Detectives wanted to find out if any of Becky's neighbors had security cameras outside their homes. One neighbor, in particular, had installed a camera on the side of their house after their car had been broken into 1 year earlier. This camera was directed towards the neighbor's driveway, which shared a boundary with Becky's home. The camera's function was to turn on and alert the neighbors whenever movement was detected. Unfortunately, on the night of Becky's death, the camera was unable to record anything significant. However, further investigation revealed that the camera had captured something unusual the previous day. At 1:05 a.m., the day before Becky was killed, the camera captured a person walking down the driveway toward the back of Becky's house. Approximately 48 minutes later, the same individual was observed walking in the opposite direction. Becky's neighbor's camera had also recorded a similar incident about a week earlier on February 14th. After Becky's neighbors noticed a dark-clad figure lurking around her house on their security camera footage on Valentine's Day, they wasted no time in informing her. The neighbors said she became paranoid once they informed Becky about the mysterious figure. Although Becky told her neighbors she didn't see anyone on her property, she heard voices in her backyard the night before, which scared her. Because of the security camera footage from Becky's neighbor, officers searched the rest of the neighborhood to find more footage showing this dark-clad, mysterious person. Officers found videos from a house and the Quincy bus barn, and that footage showed a person on a bike dressed in dark clothing riding toward Becky's house. These videos showed a person riding a bike dressed in dark clothing, consistent with the description of the mysterious person seen in the driveway footage. After detectives had analyzed the recorded times of videos, they began to suspect that the person seen on the bike was the same person seen in the footage from Becky's driveway. Although Becky's neighbor's security camera did not capture any footage of the mysterious person on the night of her murder, officers stumbled upon footage of a person on a bike riding in the direction of Becky's house right before and after the incident. The person in this footage matched the description of the person seen lurking in Becky's driveway in the days prior to her murder. Even though the video evidence proved to be helpful in the investigation into Becky's murder, it did not provide a significant amount of information due to the poor quality of the footage. The detectives were unable to identify the person depicted in the video, as the image was grainy and made it difficult to determine if this person was male or female. However, one noticeable aspect of the video that stood out to the detectives was the bike the individual was riding. They observed that it did not appear to have reflectors on the wheels. When Becky's sister heard that she was murdered, only one person came to mind as Becky's estranged husband, Tim Bleefnick. Becky's sister, who had a first-hand account of the contentious divorce between Becky and Tim, shared this information with the detectives working on her sister's case. With this information, the detectives began to consider Tim as a suspect in Becky's murder. The timing was especially significant, as Becky's murder occurred 1 week before they were supposed to finalize their divorce. As the investigation into Becky's murder continued, investigators made a crucial discovery: a bike lacking reflectors on its wheels which matched the ones seen on the security camera footage only a block away from Tim Bleefnick's house. This discovery intensified the suspicion surrounding Tim, prompting the detectives to obtain a search warrant for his residence. When the police executed the search warrant, Tim was compliant and respectful throughout the search. He willingly stood outside his home, accompanied by the officers, as investigators looked through his belongings. On March 13, 2023, 2 weeks after Becky was murdered, Tim was arrested and charged with her murder. After Tim was arrested, his mugshot became public, and his appearance shocked Becky's family and friends. What they saw in the mugshot was a far cry from the clean-cut man they once knew. Instead, they saw a disheveled, unkempt person who appeared in poor physical condition. To many, Tim's appearance reflected the effects that the divorce had on him. His once well-maintained appearance had deteriorated, with unkempt hair and messy clothing. Friends and family members speculated that the divorce had taken a toll on his physical and mental well-being. However, Tim had a different explanation for his changed appearance. He claimed that he was growing his hair out for charity. According to Tim, he was participating in an awareness campaign to support cancer research. Because of Tim's appearance on Family Feud and his bizarre response about wishing he had not married his wife when he was arrested for murdering his wife, the clip went viral. Many saw Tim's remark as an eerie foreshadowing of what was to come. They argued that the bizarre response on Family Feud served as an eerie indicator of Tim's true intentions and feelings towards his wife. Some even labeled it as a warning sign that something sinister was brewing within their relationship. The investigators thoroughly examined Tim's phone and discovered he had created a Facebook account under the name John Smith. Through their investigation, the detectives learned that Tim was searching for a bicycle on Facebook and found a blue Schwinn without any reflectors on the wheels. This discovery was intriguing, as it matched the description of a bike found abandoned 1 block away from Tim's residence. Despite the strong case against Tim, the detectives encountered a significant challenge. When arrested, Tim was held without bond, but he enacted his right to a speedy trial. Under the terms of this right, prosecutors were required to bring the matter to trial within 90 days of Tim's arrest. The prosecution faced a significant challenge in convincing a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Tim murdered Becky due to the absence of a confession or DNA evidence. Juries typically look for these 2 key elements in criminal cases. In this case, the state lacked both. In order to successfully prosecute Tim for his wife's murder, the prosecution had a daunting task ahead. Exactly 3 months after Becky Bleefnick's tragic murder in her home, Tim Bleefnick stood trial on May 23, 2023. During Tim's trial, the state presented evidence to the prosecution that investigators had recovered at the crime scene. One of the pieces of evidence discussed was the shredded pieces of plastic found on the floor around Becky's body. The prosecution claimed that the shredded plastic pieces were pieces of an Aldi's grocery bag. The prosecution further presented evidence to the jury that stacks of these bags were later found during a search of Tim's house. According to the prosecutor, Tim used the plastic bags to act as a silencer as he shot his estranged wife several times. They argued that Tim utilized the bags to muffle the sound of the gunfire and prevent it from being heard by others. The prosecution alleged that Tim left DNA while using these Aldi bags. They called an expert to the stand who testified that Tim was more than likely the DNA contributor. This expert also testified that Tim's DNA could not be excluded from DNA found under Becky's fingernails. The prosecutors presented evidence to the jury indicating that a crowbar found in Tim's basement may have been used to pry open the window at the victim's house on the night she was murdered. However, an expert testified that although there were microscopic consistencies between the pry marks and the crowbar, she could not say that the crowbar found in Tim's basement was used. To strengthen their case, the prosecution presented several searches that Tim had made on his phone, including 1. How to open my door with a crowbar. 2. How to make a homemade pistol silencer. 3. How to clean gunpowder off your hands. 4. Average police response time in Quincy. The prosecution called an expert to the witness stand who testified that she compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to shell casings investigators found when they searched Tim's house and determined that 27 of those casings from Tim's home had been fired from the same 9mm weapon used to murder Becky. However, when investigators searched Tim's house, they never found Becky's 9mm gun, which he had refused to turn over to her. Tim later stated that he had not seen that weapon in months before Becky was murdered. When the defense had the opportunity to call witnesses, they opted not to do so. After the 6-day trial ended, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict. As a result, Tim was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even though Tim claims innocence and says he plans to appeal his conviction, Becky's family believes that he is exactly where he should be. During Tim's sentencing hearing, Becky's family had the opportunity to read impact statements. One of Becky's sisters took this opportunity to make Tim aware of the consequences of his actions on the well-being of his sons. She emphasized the point that the choices he had made were causing his sons to suffer. Despite Becky's passing, her sister vowed to keep her alive in the hearts of her 3 sons. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope the stories gave you something to think about, or dream about. Sleep well, stay safe, and don't forget to subscribe. Good night.